Harold here with a very important lesson on how to be a good neighbor. This whole story starts when Mrs. H and I went to visit our new neighbors. They had moved in a month ago, so we thought we'd pop by and say, "Hello." Bob and Betty greeted us at the door and invited us in for tea. As soon as I stepped into the house, I knew something was wrong. Bob and Betty didn't have a single picture on their walls. Not a one. So we get home and Mrs. H says to me, she says, "They seem like such a nice couple." I agreed that they were very nice, but it seemed like a real shame that they don't have any pictures on their walls. "Now, Harold, I'm sure they'll get to it," she says, but I couldn't sleep a wink that night. I tossed and turned, thinking about poor Betty and Bob. They seemed so nice. So the next morning I went online at AtlanticPhotoSupply.com and uploaded some of the scenic photos from the last trip I took with Mrs. H to Aardvark Mountain. I popped in the next day and picked up my pictures and some frames, and I went home to assemble my gift for the neighbors. The photos looked great, and the frames were perfect. I couldn't wait to show Bob and Betty. I ran right over to give them their surprise and help them hang their new art, only, they weren't home. And Bob left his basement window open. Well, not one to waste the opportunity to be a good neighbor, I crawled in through the window, locked it behind me, and then went upstairs to hang the pictures for Betty and Bob. I was just in the middle of hanging the last one when the police arrived. The neighbors had called the cops. Can you believe that? So that's where you find me now, folks, in the big house, waiting on Mrs. H to bring the bail so I can come home. And the worst part? Now I'll never know if Betty and Bob ever get to hang any pictures on their walls. The moral of this story is to send your friends and neighbors to AtlanticPhotoSupply.com to solve their own home decor dilemmas. And don't pull a Harold.